Roland explains.
The ledger is thick and it's filling up with names. This recruitment office has been open only a matter of days and already hundreds of men have signed on. The army for which they're enrolling doesn't exist yet, but that isn't deterring the volunteers. These young soldiers joined the uprising against Muammar Gaddafi on the first day. Now they've enlisted in the rebel force and they say they're ready to march on Tripoli.
We don't want money or cars or anything. We want to protect the country and its people.
A lot of young people are sacrificing themselves. They want to go to the West. We have old men and women who will go to the West to liberate it.
So there's no shortage of volunteers, no shortage of patriotism and revolutionary zeal. But as to exactly when, how, and even if they intend to advance on the capital, that's another question.
The anti-Gaddafi forces say their first task is to defend the east of the country, what they call Free Libya. Taking the fight to the capital would be the next step.
We have a force that can protect Benghazi. The force may use heavy trucks to transport tanks to go to Tripoli and pass through Sirte on the way because it still supports the regime. The power we have is enough. The ammunition, supplies and fuel are also enough. We don't have a problem.
But a tour of this airfield paints a less optimistic picture of what the rebels have at their disposal. Rusting Soviet-era fighter planes that haven't left the tarmac in years. All part of Gaddafi's strategy to prevent the army from ever threatening his rule.
The army was dismantled years ago. The regime is concentrating only on security units.
The victory they're celebrating is incomplete as long as Muammar Gaddafi remains in control of cities in the west. And most Libyans fear he will not be defeated without more bloodshed. Jackie Rowland, Al Jazeera in eastern Libya.
Well, meanwhile, a hardening stance from the international community on the situation in Libya. The United States says it's moving its warships and air forces near Libya in response to the crisis there. Let's speak more about a possible military intervention with Theodore Karasik, who's the head of the research and development at the Institute for Near East and Gulf Military Analysis. Joins us live from Dubai. Thank you very much for speaking to us. So Hillary Clinton is saying that the United States and its allies are considering imposing a no-fly zone over Libya. How likely is this, in your opinion, and will it be effective?
Well, it's a very interesting question because it's going to take at least a few more days to get a no-fly zone up and running over a small part of Libya. The other issue here is which other allies are going to be involved in this. Is it going to be the UK? Is it going to be France? Is it going to be NATO? And so on. We may not have time actually to put up a no-fly zone because of the limited assets that Gaddafi has in terms of his air force. He's using them now, and he's going to use them up very quick. So a no-fly zone may be actually something that's a little too late.
But will it be effective, you think, afterwards?
Well, again, if one is supposed to put up a no-fly zone to send a message, and you don't have an air force that you're able to put up, then maybe it becomes more of a propaganda message that the U.S. and its allies are supervising Libyan space in order to make it safer for Free Libya to make its move on to Tripoli.
So what do you think now is the likelihood then of a military intervention? We heard Hillary Clinton say that all options are on the table. Is that likely in your opinion?
Well, whenever there's a contingency such as this one, there's always plenty of plans available. Moving assets into the region, including naval and air assets, is part of this approach. And there are a number of different tools that can be pulled from the toolbox to use in this situation. In this situation, most likely will be the humanitarian aid tool, as well as perhaps some covert operations in support of Free Libya. But anything involving a land force or some kind of other intrusion will be seen almost akin to the occupation of Iraq, and that will destroy the ability for Free Libya to promote itself as an independent popular uprising.
Let's talk about Colonel Gaddafi's options, if we can. Now, it must have been decades since Gaddafi's Soviet-era fighter jets were deployed. How effective is his military tools right now, do you think he could carry out a major attack if he wanted to?
Well, this is a very interesting question also because it has to do with the current status of the Libyan order of battle. In other words, what is the entire status of all of his equipment? And as was mentioned before, it's all Soviet era. And it's going to be very difficult to use this material in many circumstances. Where it is useful, however, is in urban combat. And I think that's what we're going to move towards as Free Libya moves on to other cities near Tripoli and into Tripoli itself. We're going to be facing a very nasty urban combat that might make other urban combat centers in the Balkans and in the Northern Caucasus look tame.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. Theodor Karasik, head of the Research and Development at the Institute of Near East and Gulf Military Analysis, joining us live from Dubai. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now let's move on to other news. And Yemen's president has lashed out at Israel and the United States, blaming them for orchestrating the opposition protests he's facing. Thousands of protesters have taken to the streets of the capital, Sana'a, again on Tuesday. Government forces have been trying to block protesters from entering the capital. The demonstrators want President Ali Abdullah Saleh to step down.
There is a media control room in Tel Aviv, which is the cause of all these problems sweeping the Arab world, and the protesters are just mimicking them. These events are managed by the White House. We hear statements by President Obama asking the Egyptians to do this, then telling the Tunisians to do that. This is none of your business, Mr. President. You are the President of the United States, not the Arab world.
Now, there's been a major power cut in Sana'a affecting our studio in the city, but we can still speak to AlJazeera's Hashem Ahel-Bara on the phone. Hashem, we're hearing of another major setback for President Saleh at the south.
Yes, Sheikh Abdul-Majid al-Zindani, who is one of the senior clerics in Yemen, has joined the anti-government protesters. He went to the podium and he talked to them and he addressed President Saleh, telling him, if you're genuine about reform in Yemen, you have to understand that the people have all the rights to express their views freely. So this is going to be extremely important because Saleh, until yesterday, was banking on the clerics to convince Yemenis not to take to the streets. Now that Abdul-Majid al-Zindani is joining the protesters, that is just going to put further pressure on Ali Abdullah Saleh, who's now faced with mounting pressure from Yemenis, independent politicians, tried to quit power.
So he's made a number of concessions in the last few weeks, President Saleh, Hashem. He just yesterday announced perhaps the formation of a national unity government, again rejected by the opposition. What options does he have left, you think?
He's changing tactics now. He's on the offensive. He knows that he cannot offer further concessions. Now he's telling his own people that what you see in the Arab world is orchestrated by the Israelis and the Americans. And as you know, this is one of the most conservative societies in the Arab world where anti-American sentiment is really